Emil Cadlick here with FantasyNation.com. We have a wonderful pioneer of fantasy sports guest today. He actually started his fantasy career back in 1987. He was a very important person in the growth of fantasy sports and also an important person in the development of the Fantasy Sports Trade Association, which of course was very important over decades. I'm honored to welcome Rick Wolf. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Emil. Thank you for having me. I was born to do fantasy sports, and I haven't done anything else since 1987. So it's been exciting for me, and I love the games. And even now, I'm in multiple drafts as we speak.
Are these baseball drafts mainly, or?
Yes, baseball, best ball still. Won't flip to football until after the NFL draft. I don't like to be doing football drafts until after the NFL draft.
Tell us about the history of your family from Connecticut back in 1869.
Yeah, and I just found out about this and just did a little more investigation. That was about 3 years ago. My sister was going through some of my mother's stuff. She's now 90, and found some old pictures of her family, actual pictures of the first game in Connecticut. The Milford team came to play, and my I don't know how many great levels it would be. Grandfather, William Van Cott, judge, a prominent judge in New York, actually. He and his two sons played in the game, and he coached, and they played against the Milford team in what is the first baseball rules game. And apparently they had brought those rules from New York, where in upstate New York, they had changed the game of rounders and the game of baseball, not two words, not one word, which was played up by the Great Lakes, and put the rules, Cartwright's rules in place.
Wow,
and
that's crazy.
It is crazy. And I just found out about it a short time ago, and I said, that explains everything. It's in my blood.
It's a genetic thing. I don't know if you noticed, I put the picture up. You probably can't see. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, I can.
That's that one you sent to me. That's incredible. That's just crazy. So glad people have saved those pictures all that time. So tell us about your youth, your childhood, how you got into sports, and how you eventually heard about fantasy sports.
Yeah, well, I grew up in an odd household, and we won't go into the depth and breadth of that, but I have 4 brothers and sisters, and we spent a lot of time by ourselves. So we did things like, we dug bases in our backyard, and we fouled so many balls off the back of the house that we knocked most of the shingles off the back of the house. And baseball was just something we played pretty much every day, even my sisters. So my closest sister to me was quite a baseball player. And yeah, really, really, really enjoyed just playing that. All the neighborhood kids would come over into my backyard every day, and right after school, and we would play baseball every day.
That's incredible. So as you...
I never got really good at it, but I played every day.
At least your sister was good at it.
There you go.
Before you went to work in 1987, did you go to college, or where did you kind of get it?
Yeah, I went to college at SUNY Binghamton. I got a BS in computer science, a BS in mathematics. I came out and began working for Western Union, who did telex, and they didn't have a store and forward system for telex at the time. So basically you had to type in a telex, and then it would call, and then if it didn't connect, you had to type it over again. So we created the first store and forward system because that didn't exist. So you typed it in once, and then it recalled automatically. We called it the store and forward exchange, the SAFE system. And so after that, I got a little arrogant about the fact that I had, done something so cool for the UN, and every country in the world was using it. And I thought it was the coolest thing. And so when they offered me a raise without a promotion, I said, no, thanks. I need the highest title in the company. I was really an arrogant jerk. And so I left and went to IBM. And IBM was just starting their Prodigy service then. So I was put on the Prodigy R&D team. There were 120 developers there, trying to build out the first internet, if you will. It was 400 nodes around the United States to cache things, news, weather, sports, shopping, the first online shopping networks, all those kinds of things. Well, those 120 programmers, there were about 3 people who liked sports. So I got to do everything that was sports for the next 10 years. So it's really, that's how it really started. Is every time somebody would say, hey, we want to build a scoreboard, I'd be like, oh, I'll do that. And we got a beautifully designed game from John Butterfield called Baseball Manager, which was the first fantasy baseball game, but really it was more of a simulation game. You set up all your lineups, your rotation and your relievers and your lineup, and then it would pull performances versus the same-handed pitchers that you happen to be facing in a head-to-head manner, do a simulation on it, and then determine a head-to-head winner every night, and then you'd run a real season of 100 games. Probably similar to what we're going to have this year.
Let's hope not. All fingers crossed.
It would pool all the performances until you got to the point where you got to May 1st, and then at May 1st it would start pulling real performances. So I got to write all that software, and I wrote the email processors for them, wrote the first chat for Prodigy. So some of the first things online that ever existed, I got a chance to work on because I was born at the right time.
So just off a beaten path, because I'm a program nut myself, what code were you using? What software language were you using way back in the late 80s?
You're going to find this really interesting. You'll probably cut this out because nobody else will. But I was a C++ writer, wrote in C, and learned Modula 2 in college and Pascal. And when we started writing, IBM was having none of that because it was owned by AT&T. C was Bell Labs language. So they had us write our own language in assembler called the Prodigy assembler language.
Seriously?
And then it basically had all the same syntax as C, but it was 6 times slower. So we begged them over and over again to allow us to use the C programming language. And part of the reason that I think Prodigy failed is because management consistently said IBM was better than everything and wouldn't allow us to use the best in breed from outside. And largely same thing with Windows. They wouldn't use native Windows. Instead, they developed a layer underneath the disk operating system to put their own. They called it Prodigy 2, and it was a Windows version, but it was their own layer instead of actually using the Windows libraries. So we spent a lot of time writing a lot of things that were already existed. So.
Wow. So as these games progressed, the first one you said was more of a simulator. When did you actually get into using stats for fantasy games?
Well, we did right then in 1990 because I don't know if you remember, and maybe he's a pioneer you should have on here, but Patrick Hughes developed one of the first downloadable softwares. I think James Serra had a downloadable software at the time also, a fantastic one, but Prodigy selected to use that as their downloadable software. So then I parsed the sports ticker wire feed to put the correct stats into files so people could dial into Prodigy and pull down the files to update their FFL package. It was Terry Bradshaw football.
Yeah.
And they could update their Terry Bradshaw football. And we had 27,000 leagues that year. So 27,000 people downloaded the software to make fantasy football leagues. They were probably already doing it by hand or already using the software, but they signed up for our service to get the stats from it in that first year in 1990. And Baseball Manager came out that year as well.
So the software you said again was the Patrick Hughes software you're using in 1990?
Yeah, and he had Mike Richter hockey and Terry Bradshaw football, and he had a basketball one too. And he had them for all sports. So what I did was just parse the wire feed with daily stats and create packages that people could, log in and pull down and then run off their drives in order to update their league stats and then upload those back to Prodigy so they could share with their friends in a visual format.
Well, it sounds like you had a blast back then. I'm jealous.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Wild, Wild West.
Yeah. So you worked through 95 with IBM/Prodigy, and then what happened?
And then it got better. Like, if you think that's the Wild, Wild West, it really got crazy. Because, when we went down to start SportsLine, I was literally the 4th person interviewed down there because they tried to drag everybody who had anything to do with ESPN down to Fort Lauderdale. And there was a whole group of us at Prodigy who put ESPN on Prodigy in 92. So in early 95, they tried to get all of us. So I went and interviewed in February, and there were only 4 people there. And I said, there's no way I'm coming down here. You guys have no money. You don't have any infrastructure. You don't have a single guy who knows any tech. Okay. And they gave me a standing offer. And so I put it in a drawer. I thought nothing of it. And then my wife switched to residency from Westchester County in New York to Miami. So we planned to move to Miami, and I was going to telecommute for IBM and work out of my house in Fort Lauderdale. Well, guess what was in Fort Lauderdale? SportsLine was in Fort Lauderdale. So by accident, I actually accepted the job locally because I wanted to be in an office instead of at home, because telecommuting was impossible then. It was a dial-up at, super low speeds. I have 100 megabit running right now, and we had 300 baud, so that was 300 bits per second, not 10 million or 100 million. So it was just impossible to do any work. So I took the job at SportsLine and I was a 13th employee basically because I was moving there anyway. And it turns out to be an amazing ride, and just, it became CBSSports.com. And of course, the first real stronghold on fantasy, the first million user fantasy property.
Was it really? I did not know that.
Yeah, 1.1 million people used it before 1999.
Wow.
And then we set it free in 2000, and it was almost 3 million people using it in 2000.
Tell us about the relationship with Commissioner.com and how all that got started.
Yeah, so really how that starts is, like, I go to the investment people and I convince them that we want to break down the market to casual fan, team fan, fantasy fan, gambler, historian, and collector. So you can basically, every sports fan can be put in one of those buckets or more than one of those buckets, and you can create products and services for each one. So nobody really understands the fantasy bucket that well. We have not 120 programmers like we had at IBM. We have like 8 or 10. And we're trying to find good programmers, but they're really hard to find great ones. So we're developing all these. We developed the first fantasy games. A guy named Tony Fernandez, who now is the CTO for My Fantasy League, I believe. He did a lot of this on the middle of his back. I thought of the ideas. Another guy named Ed Bennell thought of the ideas, and he just built them. We built them on Friday nights, on Saturdays, whenever we were together. But he built a lot. He built a lot of the first commissioner stuff. But he was also building the registration system, the first Super Bowl site, Shaq.com, TigerWoods.com. Tons of different thing. Netscape. We built Netscape sports site then. They were 85% of all browsers. So we were doing a ton of other stuff that was mainstream sports, and plus the CBS relationship coming with 10 programmers. So, we had bumped into, I was already back in New York, and I bumped into these guys, the Commissioner.com guys, and I checked out their software, and it was pretty good. So I brought Tony up to New York, and he vetted them and checked them out. And we believed that they could plug and play their software over our infrastructure, change some things in their software to match what Tony had done much better. And then, we'd have the best of both worlds, the best things that they had and the best things that we had. And we could chase fantasy while Tony and his team could go back and chase the CBS relationship, the MLB.com relationship, the NFL.com relationship. So sort of the Commissioner.com thing happened out of necessity, and they absolutely dominated. I mean, their software was as good or better than ours, and they did 3.5 billion page views with their live scoring platform that year, and we had Domino's, I think it was, and Miller Lite against it, and it just blew through the roof on the sales side too. And we went from being a $2 to $3 million division to being a $30 million division pretty quickly.
Oh, gosh. Well, by the way, I forgot to put this up. I don't know if you can see that. That's SportsLine in October 1996.
Yeah, and as you can tell, I designed that.
I can't tell. I mean, that's beautiful.
It's awful.
It's 1996. That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I see fantasy football right in the middle of there. But you see also Football Live and Baseball Live. And those were the first live scoreboards. Because
really?
live interactive pitch-by-pitch scoreboards didn't exist before Baseball Live in August of 1995.
So you did live scoring?
This looks circa 1996 or so.
It's October 1996. As a matter of fact, you can see it up on the top right, top story, October 26th.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, this is off the Wayback Machine.
Yeah.
It's the earliest I could find. Unfortunately, the Wayback Machine. I wish the Wayback Machine went way farther back, but it goes to about 95, 96. But yeah,
Yeah, and
that's
you can see
fantastic.
there's also sports radio. There's also sports radio down there. We invested a lot in sports radio. We built a radio studio in there. We did live programming 24 hours a day. Just cranking stuff out. The most important people that came out of that, Sid Rosenberg and Scott Kaplan. Their show was then syndicated in New York for a bunch of years, and then each of them have had solo careers after that. Both amazing talents, both great human beings. So, they have their issues, but we all do.
So yeah, I'm stunned at all of this that you were part of. This is really incredible. That's just fantastic. So continue on with the progression. How that evolved.
Yeah, well, so in 2000, after we went free, I stood out in front of the industry and said, no, this is not a land grab. We're going to be free forever. And then the higher ups overrode me the following year and turned SportsLine's commissioner back to pay. So, I was not happy about it and made it known. And then I got my walking papers. So after building a $30 million division, I was asked to move along.
Wow.
So I came back here and I found my friends from Prodigy, who were in my first baseball manager league in 1990, who had left Start All-Star Stats.
Oh.
And I had a couple drinks with them, and I said, well, how do we build to beat CBS SportsLine? Because I'm a little salty, and and so let's see what we can do here. And so we got together. We got deals with Fox and with MLB and with NHL, and we immediately started building games with them. We took over a company called sandbox.com and built them within our infrastructure. And then we took a section of All-Star Stats League Manager, which was a very popular league manager for baseball, enormously popular. They were in the mid 90s late 90s while I was at SportsLine. They were buying every company that didn't want to do their league management anymore. So they were buying Heath and North Shore, and they were buying all these companies. I don't know if they actually bought those two. Those were two of the bigger ones. But they bought USA Stats from Bill Myers. And they were strategically buying stat providers and then just loading them into their system and then getting, using their technology in order to be able to have higher margins on those. So they had a section in the league manager called Rotoworld, which was just the news. And, I had just done CBS SportsLine.com, and I said, why can't we do Fox.rotoworld.com and, make it a destination site? So I'm sure you probably have a Wayback Machine picture of Rotoworld, but we pulled it out from behind there and put the 4 quadrants up for the news. And an absolute ridiculous pioneer named Matthew Poliot did news for all sports at that time. Somewhere around 200 player updates a day, between 100 and 125 in baseball, and then 75 or 80 in the other sports, and he did it every day, and he was the only guy on staff. So we added Greg Rosenthal shortly after that to do NFL, and he took NFL to a completely different level there. And then we built the site from having no users to having 5 million uniques a month, which is enormous. And we were able to make money off of poker and off of offshore gaming sites in the early 2000s.
That's incredible. I did not know that all about the All-Star Stats. So then what's the next step?
Well, then NBC buys the rights to football in 2006, and I'm not sure they knew they were going to win the bid, so they didn't have a complete digital fantasy strategy in place at all. So we had, on our sandbox, we had been doing the official games for the AFL, for the Arena Football League. And so the NBC guys knew the people over there, so they called them up and they said, who should do our fantasy? And they called me and connected me with NBC. We went in and pitched them on, what we should be doing for them. And they loved the fact that Rotoworld had so much traffic. Because if you think about it, right, if they're selling ads at $30 per thousand, and we're selling them at $3, they can immediately make it 10 times more money than us with a property like Rotoworld. So the traffic from Rotoworld was interesting. It was a league manager that probably could have competed with Yahoo if we invested enough money in it. It was a game site that was a full-blown game site, 25 games in 9 sports, including AFL, which they were broadcasting. So we had a lot of assets for them and a lot of domain knowledge and a lot of experience because I was previously with CBS. So they contracted us to do their fantasy. As we began building it, they then realized that they could make us very rich but never own us if they didn't buy us right away. So they purchased us in the summer of 2006 before NFL began in August of 2006.
Oh, okay.
And then I spent 5 years running their digital business development for NBC Sports under a fantastic guy named Kevin Monahan.
Kevin Monahan, okay.
Yeah. He is the straw that stirs the drink without telling anybody he is. Nobody. Wow. He made every deal work, or a lot of deals work, and took almost zero credit for it. And I love that kind of attitude, the get it done as a team, and then deflect all of the energy from you to the team. And he just taught me so much in the 5 years that I was there that it's just made me both a better human and a better executive.
Wow, that's fantastic. So what's the next step now?
Well, the next step is NBC gets, I work for Ebersol and his team.
Yep.
And they're fantastic. They're a family unit. They're great to each other. They care about each other. Everybody does the right thing. They're owned by GE, so a good quality company. I'm involved in some situations where I'm in rooms where GE Capital's thinking about buying Daily Racing Form or thinking about buying big giant companies, and I'm helping them figure out whether or not they should spend $220 million or $240 million. It's really exciting. It's really fun. Everything that's sports over at GE. One of the 3 or 4 of us get called over to talk to it about. A guy named Rick Cordello, who came with me from Rotoworld, ends up being the lead digital guy for all of sports Comcast in this ride. So, wow. But I get to work more in the trenches. More visiting with people, hearing their pitches, figuring out whether they fit into NBC or not. It's a good 5 years, but what happens is the Comcast merger happens, and the SEC holds it up because they're concerned that it will create a monopoly with buying all the content you put on cable. And what if they only chose to use NBC Universal movies? And what if they chose to shut that off, right, from other people? So a lot of rules have to get put in place. It takes 2 to 3 years, and I just can't sit there anymore not getting things done because they put a hold on all business deals for like over 2 years. Wow. And I'm writing them and I'm negotiating, but hey guys, we can't really do that yet. So I decide to move on, and they bring somebody in. I stay 6 extra months to train people and to make sure I pass off all my stuff, and then I jump off. A great job with a great family there. I love the NBC people, but I just wanted to go back to fantasy and get stuff done. Mm-hmm. So
and how did you do that?
Well, at first, failure always leads to success, I say. So I wrote a plan for something I called Roto Nation, and it was a good plan, a strong plan. We had investment behind it, but I was kind of afraid to just be on my own. Remember, I worked for IBM, CBS, and NBC.
Yeah.
Right. And in between, a very, very stable all-star stats company. So as much as they say I'm a serial entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur as long as somebody else's money is there. Right. Seriously. I mean, to be honest. So I had this amazing plan, but I chicken out. I say, all right, I'm going to hold the line on this. And I do consulting for a couple of years. So I consulted for a project called InGamer out of Canada, Nick Solsky, who now runs Monkey Knife Fight. Fantastic human, great friend. We worked together for a while to try and get some stuff done. We were working back through NBC. We just never could get it fully completed. And then I worked for Advanced Sports Logic for a time for Leonard Lapadula.
Oh, okay.
An automated service that would allow you to get all the information you needed to succeed in your fantasy football leagues. And then I found Al Williams and the guys at Fantasy Alarm in the fall of 2013, and I showed Al my Roto Nation idea. And he said, well, we're chasing something kind of similar. He showed me his plans. And then we kind of merged them to be what we thought would be a great combined plan between where they were and what we could do. And it gave me the protection of having a partner who took half the risk, more than half the risk, and allowed me to run the vision that I had, and at the same time combine, be open-minded enough to combine a deeper content vision than the technology vision that I was bringing.
Fantastic, and that's been a great
And that's
success.
what we're doing. We're 6 years in. Honestly, we probably already would have been out if there wasn't a 2015 debacle with the state legislations falling apart for daily fantasy sports. But we had to pivot, and now we're both daily fantasy sports and seasonal fantasy sports. Nice technology base. We build products and services for a number of different companies, including a major media company, and we're both B2B and B2C.
Oh, well, that's pretty. I did not know that. That's really nice. So, also the Fantasy Sports Trade Association. Tell us all about how you got involved and some of the highlights there. Yeah,
well, some of it's kind of an accident, and the leadership role comes because I have a really good friend in Greg Ambrosius. But we all were at that convention that James Sarah's company ran.
You were there too?
Everybody was meeting there, and I was sort of the newbie in the group. A lot of people kind of knew each other, and I was also, like I told you in my early days, really arrogant about my technology prowess, especially. Uh-huh. And so when I was there and I'm running CBS SportsLine and feeling pretty good about what we're doing with our technology over there, we built the first commissioner. We built the first ever online draft guide.
Wow.
We called it the assistant GM. We were too stupid to call it a draft guide. But the assistant GM would help you figure everything out, and it had all these tools in it to help you in season as well. And we called it the assistant GM, and then we had a salary cap game and a commissioner product. We called it the triple play, and we sold it as one product, and then we did that for each sport. So for each sport, you'd buy these three things. And I thought, I was really cool, and now I know better. And when I met these people there, they all went to talk about starting the trade association stuff. I was like, and I think I was with Steve Bird. I'm not sure, but I was like, no, I'm good over here, And so they went to talk about how to get it started and stuff. And then Greg approached me later that night, I think, and said, we really want you to be part of this. Can you be a founding board member? You're not a founder, but you're running the biggest media company for this stuff right now. And we really want you to be, we want to use your name. We want to use that company's name. We want CBS on this. So I said, sure, I'll be a founding board member. Sounds great. And so for the first couple of years, I wasn't like heavily involved really, and the conversation would happen and I would kind of listen, and I was kind of just learning. And then in 2001, when I left CBS, we had a changeover in the board, and they elected Greg president. And Greg said the only way he would accept being president is if I was his chairman. So
nice.
He put me into a leadership position quickly. He and I, there aren't many people who work as well as we do.
That's fantastic.
He defined the direction. He was the voice, and I got everything done. I got, all the details done. I was in the back room making sure that I was whipping the vote. If you think about it, he was Andy Shepard, and I was Martin Sheen from American President, if you will.
That's very good.
I was getting everything done.
Well, you're still involved with the trade association now?
Yeah, I'm back on the board again. I took a short hiatus to focus on a nonprofit organization, Break the Hold, that I've been working with. And they're running smoothly and doing well. So I came back to my love, fantasy sports.
Well, tell me about Break the Hold.
Yeah, so Break the Hold is an organization that helps young people understand and try to eliminate suicide as an option. So, I don't know about today with coronavirus, but every day before the coronavirus situation happened, about 3,200 young people between the ages of 14 and 18 would try to kill themselves.
Wow.
And in 1970, the number was almost the same, about 3,000. But in 1970, only 4% were succeeding. In 2019, 13% were succeeding.
Wow.
So just a larger number of people in America thinking that suicide's an option. So, we're working with the schools, education programs. We have 19 schools in New York already. The New York governor has named Break the Hold Day as June 9th every year. So he's on board. He has made mandatory mental health curriculum in every high school in New York by 2023. We're trying to spread this out now to more states. We have a curriculum that we're using, but we don't care as long as somebody's using a curriculum and getting people to talk about their feelings and understand that they're not alone and understand they're important. And so we're just trying to make a difference, especially for young people, but for everyone. Everyone struggles. And I mean, I won't assume anything about you, Emil, but I will tell you that, I thought about ending it, and I think, just about anybody thinks about it. Now, what we're saying is, what we know is people who have survived tell people that they wish they never tried and they shouldn't have tried, and that they're, now they know they're relevant. And so we're just trying to spread the news to people that, if you have thoughts about it, that's fine, but you can't act on those, and you do belong, and you should talk to other people because you're not alone.
Well, thanks so much for doing that. That's fantastic work and very important work. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, Break the Hold stands for Brian T. Holleran, one of the young men that we lost here in Pleasantville.
Oh, okay. Wow. Thank you so much. Now, you got a show on Sirius Radio for a while. Tell us about that.
Yeah, 8 years on Sirius XM. My radio partner is also my college dorm mate. He lived 3 doors down from me in Binghamton. So we've been friends for 37 years. So we've known each other for a long time. That makes things easy. For me, it makes it really easy. He's a consummate broadcaster, and I can know that I'm always with a good friend. And even if I say something really stupid, he'll find a way to get me out of it. So I think that, that whole part of it works for us. So, we're also a little bit Oscar Felix. He's a high-powered lawyer, past the bar, and I generally don't like to pass any bar. So
I like that. Good.
We took that to the airways, and it's good. He's very makes good cogent arguments, and I have strong gut feels, and I probably watch more baseball than he does. Certainly other teams. He watches every Yankee game, but that difference of opinion gives us a strong partnership. We've been playing in expert leagues since 2002, and we have 16 championships, and 9 baseball and 7 football, and just enjoy the camaraderie of playing together. I think when you play together, also it makes you accountable to someone, and I think it's helpful. And I think we should teach more people how to play fantasy together, especially those who are afraid to jump into the pool. The water's warm, and especially if you have a partner, it definitely makes it an easier road.
Wow, that's an interesting point. Of course, Colton was a very important person in the fight with MLBAM and et cetera. You want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, and Charlie Wiegert and Brian Matthews certainly, and John Bryson certainly incredibly important in that too, as CBC sued MLBAM for the right to continue to run their games, because MLBAM gave cease and desist to everybody in the fantasy industry, asking them to either provide, I think 80 or 90% of the profits to MLBAM, or to cease running it, because they owned the rights to the statistics, including the players' names. So that lawsuit went in the 12th district and was in process. And the FSTA, under Greg Ambrosius's leadership, hired Glenn Colton and his law firm to write an amicus brief on behalf of the FSTA. In that brief, Glenn brought the First Amendment into this, making it a federal, across all states. And then after we prevailed in that, it immediately allowed us not to have to go each district in order to fight the same battle in every district.
Smart.
But it brought it countrywide. If you will, freed fantasy sports for capitalism, if you will, for people to innovate and people to create things, and if not to be owned by the leagues.
Yeah, I remember the vote. I forget what city we were in at the FSTA, and I think we voted for $40,000 to give Colton to do the brief. I remember that vote. I remember sitting there right next to Peter Schenke, as a matter of fact, as Greg was running the meeting, and we decided to vote yes for that. So a very important time. It's a very scary time for everybody.
It cost us a lot. It cost Greg and I a lot.
Did it really? In what way?
Well, when we were bought by NBC, my job was to be liaison for Players Association and other stuff. So I ended up resigning from the board of the FSTA and starting and being part of the FSA, which was for the bigger companies at that time. It was a break-off because I was now with NBC, and I think Greg should probably tell you what happened to him, but it's pretty not good. So
I had no idea. Didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, the mounting pressure on our families and on us.
I'm so sorry about that.
Was not right in a lot of ways.
Well, I'm sorry about that. Was it pressure
and,
from the FSTA?
I would give more details, but if I get details wrong or not perfect, then that's when you get attacked, and I'd prefer not to be attacked again.
I'm sorry that happened to you. Now, that the FSTA was Clay Walker was involved in that, right?
FSA, yes.
FSA,
sorry. It started at the time that this lawsuit happened because Clay Walker and Chris Russo were contemplating a fantasy company, but they were currently with the NFL and the NFL Players Association. So by starting the FSA, they wouldn't need to be part of the FSTA anymore, who was sort of the enemy of the big companies and definitely of the Players Association, because we were now fighting for the rights to statistics. So they, at that time, the FSA started under Clay Walker's leadership, and they did a ton of research, and the motto, or the reason for being, was to bring sponsorship to fantasy sports. Excuse me. So, and they succeeded in spades. I mean, in 2007, we had Visa, Hilton, McDonald's. We had huge major, Coca-Cola. We had huge major sponsors with millions and millions of dollars flowing into fantasy sports in 2006 and 2007. And then Greg and I take over as the president and chairman over there in the opposite order. I take over leadership there, and he worked as my right-hand man. And from 2007 to 2011. In 2011, we then decide the organization succeeded. It's supposed to bring sponsors and bring awareness worldwide to fantasy. We decide we succeeded with a lot of money from major players, NBC, ESPN, all of the leagues. They all put in much more money than the fees that were coming into the FSTA. They were putting in tens of thousands each every year. And so Greg and I had a huge budget to work with to run gigantic events for sponsors and bring sponsors to realize that fantasy sports was relevant. So in those 4 years, we probably did a lot of stuff that nobody really knows about. We sponsored major conferences from the Sports Business Journal. So and we threw major events surrounding the NFL draft most times with players at them all the time, and major media executives would get signed balls from Brandon Jacobs and Steven Jackson. And we would say, hey, well, now you have to invest in fantasy sports, not with us, not with Greg or I's company, but with some company. And we brought a lot of mainstream advertisers in. And Clay Walker and Chris Russo have a lot to be proud of in starting that. It was brave to do that. But we decided by 2011 it was time to merge it back. We run our fourth NFL draft event. We'd sponsored the sports media and technology thing for the fourth time. And we kind of felt, it was time to bring that money back to the FSTA. So we took the money out of our coffers and gave it to the FSTA and got it started again.
Yeah. I was actually a member of the FSA for a couple of years there.
There you go.
Yeah, I was part of that stuff. So any funny things that happened? Any funny things that happened during your career that were entertaining?
Well, the best thing that ever happened to me was Ian Brown, an award-winning writer, got sick, and he worked for me at SportsLine, and he was supposed to cover Shaq for an epic day, and I was forced into service. So, because I was the only one geographically close enough to get there, and so I spent 24 hours with Shaq, covering him real time on Shaq.com.
Oh my God!
A day in the life, and I got to know his family. I had lunch with his family, and I hung out with his friends all day, and he was really fantastic. He was fantastic, and he was funny, and it's easily, it's easily the best celebrity day I've ever had. And I met them all with SportsLine. I was lucky enough to meet so many people. But Shaq is easily. He was 23 years old. He was young.
Wow.
And he just was full of no nervousness. He was not nervous about anything. Everything was just something he was doing at the moment. And that helped me later in life when I would get nervous or anxious about speaking before 650 people at the SBJ conference. I would think about how smooth and comfortable Shaq was picking up the mic at a benefit where 3,000 people were in the audience for the hospital wing that he just gave them for a Columbia Hospital in Newark where he was born.
That's fantastic that you were able to use that one day and make it work for you. So, well, you've had an incredible career, and you've done some. This is a fabulous story. Any other last things you'd like to bring up? No, I mean, I would kick it to you. I mean, you invented an industry. I mean, there would be no high stakes without you.
Oh, so that vertical would not exist at all without you. Yeah. And you've been a pioneer in this industry as well. So I hope you can switch to have somebody in the interview box and and put one up for you.
Well, so far I'm just enjoying doing this. I'm over 20, 21, 22. I'll probably get to 30, and then I'll probably have to stop doing it. If football comes back and I can actually, we can all try and make some money this year. Win, yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. Yeah, what do you think? Okay, obviously we're helpless, really.
At worst, they have to push football back a little bit, but it all depends on whether there's a second wave. They might get started and then have to shut it down again. Yeah. If you think about Spanish flu in the early 1900s, I just hope they have a vaccine by then. So, because if a second wave comes in the fall, it's going to be worse than the first wave.
That's exciting. Well, hey, congratulations on your career. You're truly a pioneer of fantasy sports, and I didn't know half the things you did. I knew a lot of what you did, but you've really educated me on what a great career you've had, and of course you're still going.
Just lucky to be born at the right time and lucky to be in the right rooms.
Well, you're pretty hardworking and you're pretty smart, and that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and congratulations again.
All right. Thanks, Emil.